Thank you for watching the video. This time, I'll introduce 5 lifestyle habits that no doctor would ever do because they harm your health. There are so-called healthy habits that have become common in society, but in reality, most doctors who have studied medicine wouldn't actually do them, right? Yet these things are often practiced as if they're normal. This time, among those habits, I'll pick out 5 that you might want to avoid and introduce them to you. While working in outpatient clinics and providing ward and home visit care in rural Hokkaido, I've learned a lot from various people, those who have developed different illnesses, as well as those who remain healthy and energetic in their 70s and 80s without ever getting sick. I'll be sharing this information based on those experiences and data, so please watch until the end. One thing to note, although I wrote things doctors would never do, there are as many approaches as there are doctors, so rather than saying never, I'll be introducing things that I personally can't recommend, and that most doctors with extensive medical knowledge probably wouldn't recommend either. I hope you'll keep that in mind as you watch. Here are 5 wrong health practices that doctors would never do. The first one is this. It's combination cold medicine. Some of you might think that combination cold medicine is convenient because it works for all kinds of cold symptoms, and you might be using it, but I think there are very few doctors who actually prescribe it. First of all, combination cold medicine is meant for symptoms like fever, sore throat, cough, or runny nose when you catch a cold. You usually get all those symptoms, right? So this medicine is basically a mix of all the drugs that work for those symptoms combined into one. It's true that taking just one pill is convenient because it helps with the symptoms, but you also need to be careful about the side effects. Medicines always have both benefits and drawbacks, including side effects. So if you don't have a runny nose, but take a medicine that contains ingredients to treat it, taking that medicine means you're only getting the side effects without any benefits. In particular, there are antihistamines that are sometimes included in cold medicines. Some antihistamines can cause strong drowsiness, fatigue, and a feeling of sluggishness in some people. So, because some antihistamines can cause strong drowsiness, you should avoid driving when taking them. Some medications come with such warnings, but the reality is that there are doctors who prescribe them without giving these cautions. Even when you have a cold, you still want to do your best at work or with housework. You're working on site, doing tasks where even a small mistake is not allowed. For people like that, if they're taking these antihistamines, if you take cold medicine, you might get drowsy. For example, if someone with dementia, whose cognitive function is already impaired, takes it, they might experience delirium. They might not know where they are, what season it is, or recognize the people around them. There is also a risk that such symptoms could get worse. Another thing to be careful about is that some of these combination cold medicines may contain caffeine. To counteract this drowsiness, some of them contain caffeine, but for people who are sensitive to caffeine, it can actually make it harder to sleep. Also, people with cardiovascular or heart conditions, as well as pregnant women, need to be careful when consuming caffeine. Please be careful not to take prescribed or over-the-counter combination cold medicines without knowing this. Depending on the type of cold, some people may only have a sore throat without much runny nose or coughing. For those people, generally taking a pain reliever and fever reducer should be enough. Your symptoms will improve, so make sure to get medicine that matches your symptoms. In some cases, people may have strong side effects or allergies to medication, which can suddenly worsen kidney function or cause rashes that remain on the body for life. Well, there are actually quite a few people like that, so please remember that it's always better to take as few medications as possible. The mistake that doctors absolutely never make is 5 health habits to avoid. Here's the second one. It's overusing supplements. I think many of you take supplements because you feel like they'll make you healthier. Of course, I'm not saying you shouldn't take supplements at all, but I want you to be careful not to take a lot of them blindly. That's what I mean. Do you all know what supplements actually are? Supplements are. It means to supplement or to add something. In other words, you take supplements because something is lacking and you want to make up for it. But if you have a normal diet and you're not lacking anything, even if you take supplements, I think the expected health benefits are almost non-existent. And if there were clear health benefits, they would be used as pharmaceuticals. So the supplements that are commonly available on the market, supplements compared to the effects of pharmaceuticals are a step below. They may or may not have any effect. That's the kind of thing they are. Please understand that as a basic premise. However, I'm not saying that all supplements are bad without exception. In my own clinical practice, I sometimes recommend supplements depending on the person. For example, vitamin D is a very important nutrient for strengthening bones, and it is activated by exposure to sunlight and ultraviolet rays. In addition, it helps maintain muscle strength and can also help with depression, improving symptoms of feeling down. There is data supporting these effects as well. It is said that vitamin D is especially hard to produce from the skin for people living in northern Japan or Hokkaido, where there is less sunlight and ultraviolet rays. Therefore, vitamin D is recommended for those whose levels are low or who already have weak bones or osteoporosis. In addition, it is recommended in international guidelines that women who are planning to become pregnant or are in the early stages of pregnancy supplement with folic acid through folic acid supplements. Be careful. Even if you're pregnant or want to provide nutrition for your child, trying too hard and taking various steps can be risky. If you take too many supplements, depending on the type, it can actually be harmful to your body. For example, if you take too much of a nutrient like vitamin A, it doesn't get excreted from your body, so as a result, it can harm the baby inside your belly. And even for people who aren't pregnant, taking too much vitamin A or vitamin E can cause harmful effects or adverse events in your body. That's a common fact among doctors. There's even data showing that taking too much vitamin E increases the mortality rate. Women with heavy menstrual bleeding can easily become iron deficient, so taking something with iron is recommended. There are cases where I recommend taking supplements, but that's only when there's a deficiency or a decrease, so supplements are used to make up for that. That's my way of thinking, so I highly recommend that you consult with your doctor to decide which supplements you really need. There are things that a doctor would absolutely never do. Here's the third of the 5 health habits. It's taking antibiotics for a cold. This might be partly due to the history of medicine, but in the past, antibiotics were prescribed for colds. Well, there used to be many hospitals like that. However, as medicine has advanced, it has become clear that antibiotics are unnecessary for most colds. This common knowledge has spread more and more, and now most doctors don't prescribe antibiotics for colds. However, depending on your generation, you might remember your regular doctor prescribing antibiotics just in case when you caught a cold in the past. There may be people like that, don't you think? Because of that sense of security with antibiotics, some people feel they have to take antibiotics when they catch a cold. There are many people who are mistaken in that way. However, the common cold is caused by viruses. On the other hand, antibiotics are meant for bacteria, not viruses. Viruses and bacteria are very different. They differ by hundreds of times in size, and the way they live and multiply is completely different. Bacteria can multiply on their own, but viruses infect humans or animals and use the energy from their cells to multiply, destroying those cells and spreading rapidly. Because of this, taking antibiotics for most colds won't kill the virus. So taking antibiotics can actually cause more harmful side effects to your body. You might get diarrhea or develop a rash with red spots on your body, and there's another major disadvantage as well. That's because when you take antibiotics, the bacteria learn, and gradually, they evolve to become resistant to antibiotics. When that happens, antibiotics, which are our last resort, become less and less effective, and when you really get infected by bacteria and your life is in danger, there may be fewer antibiotics left that can help you. That kind of situation can actually happen. None of the antibiotics invented by humanity work. To avoid creating such bacteria, it's important that only people who really need antibiotics take the necessary amount and the right type. Of course, that's also the responsibility of doctors, but I think it's also important for each and every one of you to know this, so you don't unnecessarily ask for antibiotics. Of course, sometimes what you think is just a cold is actually caused by a bacterium called Streptococcus attached to your tonsils, which makes your throat hurt and causes a fever. In such cases, antibiotics are necessary, so please leave the decision of whether you really need to take them to your doctor. There are mistakes that a doctor would never make. Here is the fourth of the 5 selected health tips. It's drinking fruit juice. When you hear fruit juice, you probably think it's healthy because it's made from fruit. Of course, it would be a lie if I said I never drink it at all, but I hardly ever drink it. The reason is that it takes a lot of sugar for juice to taste sweet to us. Please check how many sugar cubes are in the carbonated drinks you usually drink. I think you'll be surprised. And actually, fruit juice has been warned about even in America. In the US dietary guidelines, they mention diabetes, high blood pressure, and coronary artery disease, which refers to the blood vessels of the heart. It is said that it can increase the risk of clogging the blood vessels of the heart, so caution is necessary. According to a certain study, people who drink fruit juice compared to those who don't, there are also findings that the risk of developing diabetes increased by 21%. So please try to choose drinks that are not sweet, and if you want to consume fruit, eat the fruit itself. Please make it a habit to consume fruit in its whole form. The reason is that, as I mentioned, fruit juice increases the risk of diabetes, but blueberries, apples, and prunes. There are also studies showing that eating those can actually lower the risk of diabetes. Why does eating fruit in its whole form lower the risk? It's because the process of making juice removes dietary fiber and vitamins. And it's also possible that additives like sugar are included, so instead of drinking fruit juice, how about making it a habit to drink water or tea and eat fruit in its whole form? As for recommended ways to eat them, frozen blueberries are easy to store for a long time, and when you get a little hungry, you can put them on yogurt, but they're also delicious eaten as they are, like ice cream, so please give it a try. Here is the 5th wrong health habit that doctors avoid. It's applying food-based serums directly to your skin. Many doctors do not recommend these kinds of health practices, especially pediatricians and dermatologists probably wouldn't recommend them. Actually, the way we develop allergies is through skin sensitization. From the skin, it has been found that allergies often develop this way. For example, milk allergies or peanut allergies, those kinds of things. However, if a child's skin is irritated when they are young and substances like peanut components get into the skin, an allergic reaction can occur there, which could lead to a lifelong allergy. So smearing plant-based substances all over the skin could actually create new allergies, so please keep that in mind. And that's only natural. Our skin is built to be tough and flexible. So it's a problem if external substances get inside. That's why our bodies are designed to fight off anything that enters through a wound. So after fighting thoroughly, as a result, the body remembers it as an allergy so that it never gets in again. This is a logical defensive reaction. So please be careful and selective about what you apply to your skin so you don't trigger unnecessary defensive reactions. Of course, there are many products that are safe if they contain ingredients extracted and produced from plant-derived substances, but sometimes the plant-derived ingredients themselves contain antigens. You need to be careful with such things, so please keep that in mind. Now let's review mistakes that a doctor would never make. Of the 5 wrong health habits, the first is using multi-symptom cold medicine for a common cold. The second is taking too many supplements. The third is drinking fruit juice. The fourth is using antibiotics for a cold. The fifth is applying plant-based serums or similar products to the skin. In this way, at YouTube Medical University, we will continue to provide easy-to-understand medical knowledge that you can use starting today, responsibly from a doctor's perspective while presenting data. On social media and YouTube, both medical professionals and non-professionals are sharing a lot of information. It's important not to just take in too much information, but to focus on reliable information so that you don't end up regretting believing incorrect information. I'd be happy if you could subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any new videos. Also, in the comments section, please share the lifestyle habits you are mindful of. If you've ever had a tough experience from doing something like this, please let me know, and whether it's the like button or the dislike button, if you could rate this video, it will help me with future videos. Well then, see you in the next video.